All right, everyone, there's a couple brand new gaming news stories we need to talk about today, starting with Sony and an interesting remake trend that has been happening on the PlayStation 5 as of late. And I want to compare and contrast that with what people sometimes say about Nintendo and their excessive remakes, because if this turns out to be true, I don't think you can put very much blame on Nintendo with how they handle things at all. Then the big talking point for today's video has to do with an unreleased Zelda project getting brand new updates that have been uncovered around what this project would have looked like, and we have to break down all the details and discuss whether or not Nintendo will ever bring this to the light of day in the future right now. What's up, nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. As I mentioned, guys, we are breaking down a couple different stories today, and the first of which has to do with Sony and an interesting remake trend that is appearing. As you may remember, recently we saw the release of The Last of Us Part 1 remake, which a lot of fans were upset about for a $70 price tag, and that game had already had a PlayStation 4 remaster, and it definitely seemed like a short turnaround time to decide to remake it again on the PlayStation 5, not to mention the controversy around it missing modes that were in the original game, but you're going to sell it for more money at a $70 retail price tag. And there is now a strong rumor floating around that has been corroborated by numerous names in the industry, suggesting that Sony is actually planning on remaking Horizon Zero Dawn, which you may remember is a 2017 release. That is like us talking about Nintendo remaking Zelda Breath of the Wild right now today, as those games launched right alongside each other. And to get on the same page with all the details on what's been claimed so far around this project, let's quickly hop over to VGC and read through their detailed typed up article together. A Horizon Zero Dawn remaster is in the works for PS5, it's claimed. Sources claim an update of the 2017 game is in development along with a multiplayer spin-off. That's according to a report by MP1ST, which VGC can corroborate via our own sources. The updated version of the 2017 Guerrilla Games title will feature improved visuals to bring it up to par with this year's sequel, Horizon Forbidden West, in the form of new character models, lighting, and animation, it's claimed. In addition, it's claimed the new version of Zero Dawn will add accessibility features, graphics modes, and quality of life improvements to the gameplay itself. VGC has asked SIE for comment on the story. Recent re-releases of hit games aren't a new trend for PlayStation. The platform holder has already released multiple remasters and remakes for the PS5, including Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, Uncharted 4, and The Last of Us. A PC version of Horizon Zero Dawn was released in 2020 with improved draw distance and higher frame rates, but it mostly reused the assets and features from the PS4 version. In addition, the MP1ST report claims that Guerrilla Games is currently working on a Horizon multiplayer game for PS5 and PC, which matches what VGC reported last year. Now listen, I thought this would be a fun story to compare and contrast with what we see Nintendo do around remakes and remasters, because if you look online and you see what fans oftentimes say about how Nintendo handles their franchises, they are highly scrutinized for giving us a lot of the same games ported over to future consoles, just basic up-resed and remasters that eventually come over. And yes, you can see this done in history, most recently with games like Skyward Sword HD coming to the Nintendo Switch. That's a Wii game that got a remaster done that actually had new controls to offer, which is really notable because you needed a way to play that game with traditional button controls, in my opinion, especially considering that not everybody is a fan of motion, and the Wii was a very unique console that focused all of its gameplay primarily around motion controls. And so that one for me personally makes sense, but you may remember all the controversy around that game getting a $60 price tag from Nintendo when it was originally sold for $50 on the Wii, and many people feeling like that is not a justifiable port or remaster. And to that, I would say Nintendo has come nowhere close to crossing a line with consumers like Sony has recently. And I say this as a Sony fan. I have a PS5 sitting right to the left of me here. I enjoy booting up the games, but you have to realize that Sony has definitely started to do a cash grab strategy here with some of these hit titles getting remasters right after they were released. Again, to drive home the point, imagine if the sequel sequel to Breath of the Wild known as Tears of the Kingdom now was actually out this year in 2022. Then we get the announcement that Breath of the Wild is actually being remastered and re-released for the Switch with better visuals, or maybe we finally get that Switch 2 or Super Nintendo Switch, Switch Pro, what have you. And guess what? It's going to be 4K when docked, 60 FPS, and you can now experience Breath of the Wild in a much better frame rate and resolution with enhanced textures. That is too soon to remaster a game like this, and it's just really surprising to me that we are seeing Sony continue to double down on this strategy to try to get fans to rebuy a relatively recent release from last generation on the current generation at a higher $70 price tag, which is, I'm pretty sure, what they will sell Horizon Zero Dawn for. So it's like, what is Sony doing with these remakes slash remasters? I don't know. I found this one fascinating because it is very interesting when you think of the concept of barely upgrading visuals and textures and reselling it at a full retail price. I personally am not a fan of this. I definitely think there are plenty of games over Sony's catalog that would justify from the ground up reboots, remakes, or remasters. I would rather see Bloodborne, being a Souls fan, make it over with 4K 60 FPS and just better visuals. I think that is a masterpiece of a game that you could argue could stand a remakes remaster treatment, where these other ones, in my opinion, do not at this point in time, especially considering that Horizon Zero Dawn already has a next gen upgrade patch that does allow it to run at that 60 FPS, and you have fantastic visuals on the game already. They're just bringing it up to where Forbidden West was with the texture quality, and it just seems like a strange decision to me. And next time I hear people complain about Nintendo and their focus on too many remasters slash ports, I think you can simply respond by, well, at least they're not treating us how Sony is treating their fans with the remaster projects that are going on, and we can't even get Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD ported over to the Switch, which makes all the sense in the world for Nintendo to do from a business standpoint. So I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below how you feel about Sony and their recent trend with these remake remaster treatment games that are relatively short turnaround times from their original releases. Are you a fan of projects like this and you want to see more of them? Or are you kind of like me and you definitely do think that this is a little bit too soon to talk about doing next gen full price releases on the PS5 for games that were just out last generation and not even that far ago, literally 5 years ago in 2017 is when this game launched? And do you think that Nintendo should also get criticism for how they handle ports and remasters, or do you think that they could honestly get away with more, especially when you compare it to what's going on over at Sony? So please share all your thoughts and feelings on all things with this Horizon remake coming to PS5 soon, and what you want to see from Nintendo and remasters in the comments down below. Now, the other story we're talking about today has to do with a Zelda game that was never released, one that we actually have a lot of new details around, as there is a brand new update to this story. We are talking about a Retro Studios project that was pitched to Nintendo by the name of Heroes of Hyrule, and this would have actually been a Final Fantasy Tactics style RPG in the Legend of Zelda world that Retro really went through a lot of time working up a story behind and painting how this game would go, and really did a heavy pitch to get it cleared, and Nintendo ultimately decided not to move forward. However, there's a ton of updates and details that just dropped on the internet thanks to Did You Know Gaming, which I will have their video linked in the description down below, where they break down and highlight all of these new changes. I find it fascinating. It's almost a 20-minute video that deep dives into some of these conversations around what the game would have looked like, and I think it's an entertaining conversation to have around whether or not Nintendo will ever entertain a tactics style RPG for Zelda, as we've seen spin-offs like Hyrule Warriors be very successful in terms of sales numbers, and we do see Nintendo go in interesting gameplay directions with a staple franchise like Zelda, and I do think that it could be on the table for a resurgence at some point. And to break down some of the details of what's been uncovered here, I do want to quickly hop over to Nintendo Everything, where they have a nice article typed up highlighting some of the new details that have been discovered with the most recent Did You Know Gaming video. New details uncovered for the rejected Retro Studios Zelda spin-off Heroes of Hyrule. Several weeks ago, Did You Know Gaming released a video providing details on a couple of canceled spin-off games that Retro Studios of Metroid Prime fame had pitched to Nintendo for the Legend of Zelda series. Since then, they've managed to acquire new information on one of these two projects via an official 22-page document, a strategy game planned for the Nintendo DS titled Heroes of Hyrule. The game would have featured a plot mostly exempt of Link, in which a young boy named Corey finds a book that, unbeknownst to him, was used to seal away Ganon 100 years ago. He would have gathered pages of the book unaware of its true purpose in order to learn more about the stories held within, which detailed the adventures of a Goron, Rito, and Zora, who ventured to Ganon's castle in an effort to free Link from his evil clutches. Accordingly, the gameplay would have been split between these present-day Corey segments and past book segments. The present-day portions, constituting of roughly 1/3 of the game, would feature more traditional Zelda gameplay, with Corey wandering around town playing mini-games and fulfilling side quests in an effort to earn more pages of the book. The past is where the tactical strategy RPG gameplay would shine through, with comparisons drawn in the document to Final Fantasy Tactics, but with an additional focus placed on puzzle solving and exploration in between combat sections. The project sadly never made it very far, as Nintendo rejected Retro's pitch almost immediately. As such, no playable prototype was ever conceived, and the game remains solely tied to this 22-page design document. Still, it's fascinating to hear about this project, which would have constituted a brand new venture for the franchise and has yet to be replicated since. So for me personally, as a Zelda fan, it is definitely an exciting prospect to think of more spin-off titles for the Zelda franchise in the future. And while I'm not the biggest tactical RPG player out there, I definitely would enjoy, if done right, the mixture of the exploration in the open world that was suggested, as well as portions of the game taking place in the past being focused more around that turn-based tactical strategy RPG elements. And I would definitely be picking this up day one and checking it out if it was a real project, around the idea of whether or not Nintendo will ever dig up this 22-page document and make it into something in the future. I definitely don't see that being a strong possibility at all, but I do think we can expect more Zelda spin-offs with unique ideas due to the success of games like Hyrule Warriors, and even Cadence of Hyrule being kind of in that same spin-off family, although less integrated directly into Zelda's lore and in the same world and things. But I definitely think that the idea of more Zelda projects alongside of the main release AAA titles that we are waiting to see more from and get on May 12th, such as Tears of the Kingdom, I am in the camp personally that the more Zelda games that come to Nintendo consoles in the modern day, the better. But I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, all your personal thoughts and opinions on both the different stories we talked about today. How do you feel about the state of ports and remasters on Sony's front and Nintendo's front in the modern era? And definitely share with me whether or not you would be a fan of a tactical Zelda RPG style game, and if you think we may get this project brought back to the light of day or something similar to it in the future. Or do you think, with the type of franchise that Zelda is, that Nintendo should only focus primarily on these mainline marquee 3D big adventures like we are expecting to see with Tears of the Kingdom soon? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.